Night. Revenge. Everything changed. Ghosts don't forgive. They haunt forever.
You ever have that moment where you realize you've spent the last 5 years of your entire life sleeping next to a complete stranger? I'm not talking about differences or normal couple fights. I'm talking about that terrible, cold moment where you look into the eyes of the person who swore to love you forever and realize they were capable of destroying you without even blinking. I had that moment on a Tuesday afternoon, 2 weeks before Halloween, when my husband told me I had until Friday to move out of our $3 million home in North Vancouver. His mistress was pregnant, you see, and she needed my bedroom. My name is Min-So Choi, and for 36 years, I believed in fairy tales. Not the Disney kind, but that quiet, dangerous kind where you believe that if you work hard enough, if you're good enough, if you love someone intensely enough, everything will work out in the end. Vancouver taught me different. The cold, rainy weather of this city has a way of exposing truths that sunshine would hide. And that Tuesday, standing in our gourmet kitchen overlooking the mountains I'd paid for, the truth hit me like one of those Pacific storms that lash this coast every fall. "You're joking, right?" I said, but my voice sounded strange in my own ears, distant, like someone else was speaking. Thomas, my husband of 12 years, the man I'd met when I was just an economics student working part-time at a UBC coffee shop, stood across the kitchen island with that expression I now recognized as guilt masquerading as irritation, like I was the problem, like I was the one being unreasonable. "Min-So, please don't make this harder than it needs to be," he said. And God, the way he said my name, like it was an inconvenience. Like these 2 years of dating and 12 years of marriage were just something he needed to clear away before starting his real life. Madeline's 5 months along. She needs stability. She needs a home. Madeline. Even her name sounded expensive. Sounded like someone who grew up in West Vancouver instead of East Van like me. Someone whose parents owned properties instead of renting apartments above Korean restaurants on Commercial Drive. Someone who never had to work 3 jobs while going to college. Someone who never had to prove she deserved to be in the room. And what am I, Thomas? A ghost? This is my home too. I helped pay for it. Actually, I'd paid for it entirely, but we'll get to that. You can't just kick me out. He sighed. That sigh men give when they're about to explain something to you like you're a child. Technically, the house is in my name. My lawyer said it's cleaner that way. You'll get a settlement, of course, something fair. Fair. The word hung between us like one of Vancouver's fogs that turned the entire city into something unreal. Nothing about this was fair. Nothing about discovering your husband has been having an affair for 8 months was fair. Nothing about being replaced by a younger version, Madeline was 27, I learned later, a decade younger than me, was fair. Nothing about building an entire life with someone only to discover you were disposable was remotely close to fair. But here's the thing nobody tells you about betrayal. It's not the big dramatic gesture that destroys you. It's the little things. It's the way he stopped noticing when you cut your hair. It's how he started working late every Thursday. Always Thursday, like I was too stupid to notice the pattern. It's the way he stopped touching you like he wanted you and started touching you like obligation. It's how, looking back now, all the signs were there, blinking like Christmas lights, but you chose not to see because seeing would mean admitting that everything you built was a lie. When did this start? I asked, and my voice sounded steadier than I felt. My mother always said Choi women didn't cry in front of enemies, and somehow, at some point in the last 8 months, my husband had become my enemy.
Thomas had the decency to look uncomfortable. Does it matter? Tell me when. Give me at least that. He looked out the window at the North Shore mountains that were starting to go white with early season snow. Remember the firm's New Year's party at the Fairmont? I remembered. I'd been home with the flu. I'd insisted he go without me. I'd even helped him pick out his tie. "Happy New Year to me," I said, and something in that moment, maybe the way my voice broke, maybe the way my entire face collapsed, made him finally look like he felt something. "I didn't mean for it to happen," he said, and I laughed. Actually laughed. Because that's what cheaters always say, isn't it? Like they tripped and fell into someone else's bed. Like gravity pulled their clothes off. Like the universe conspired against their marriage vows. You never do. Nobody ever means for it to happen. But here we are. Your pregnant mistress needs my bedroom, and I have 3 days to pack up 12 years of my life? Minseo, get out. This is my house. I said get out. You can come back Friday to get your perfect pregnant girlfriend settled in. Until then, I need you gone. For a moment, I thought he'd argue, but something in my face, maybe the Choi woman's steel my grandmother had, the steel that got her through the Korean War, the steel that got my mother through immigrating to Canada with 2 kids and $40, made him back down. He grabbed his jacket, his keys, and left without another word. The sound of our front door closing, that heavy, expensive door I'd chosen because it reminded me of traditional Hanok doors back in Korea, felt like the end of everything I'd believed in. I stood in that kitchen for what felt like hours. Outside, Vancouver did what Vancouver does best in October. It started to rain. Not the gentle rain of spring, but that cold, angry rain that comes off the Pacific and makes you believe the sky itself is mourning. Which felt appropriate, actually. Even the weather was on my side. But here's what Thomas didn't know. Here's what he'd never bothered to find out in our 12 years of marriage. Here's the thing that would make the next few weeks absolutely delicious. I wasn't just Minseo Choi, the quiet Korean wife who worked part-time at a nonprofit and kept his house clean and attended his boring work functions with a smile. I was Minseo Choi, sole heir to Choi Holdings, one of the largest private real estate development companies in Asia. My grandfather had started with a single apartment building in Seoul in the 1960s. By the time he died 3 years ago, Choi Holdings owned properties in 12 countries and was worth somewhere north of $4 billion. That's with the B. Thomas thought I worked part-time at a nonprofit because I was aimless, because I didn't have ambition, because I was content being Mrs. Thomas Richardson, wife of a mid-level corporate lawyer who made $200,000 a year and thought he was hot stuff because of it. The truth? I'd been managing Choi Holdings' North American operations remotely for the past 8 years. That part-time nonprofit job, that was my cover. The nonprofit actually was a Choi Holdings subsidiary that I'd founded to develop affordable housing in East Vancouver, the neighborhood where I grew up, where my parents struggled, where families like mine still struggled. Every Thursday, when Thomas thought I was doing charity work, I was actually in conference calls with executives in Seoul, Singapore, and Hong Kong, moving millions of dollars around like chess pieces. I'd kept it secret because my father had warned me. Test him, my father had said before he walked me down the aisle. Test him without money for a few years. See if he loves you or loves what you can give him. It was traditional Korean thinking, the kind where you hide your wealth to make sure you're loved for yourself. It's also the kind of thinking that just saved me from signing away half my fortune to a cheating husband. That $3 million house Thomas was so proud of, I'd bought it in cash, but I'd put it in his name because he'd been weird about me earning more than him, and I'd wanted to protect his fragile ego. The BMW in the driveway? Mine. The vacation house in Whistler? Mine. The investment portfolio he thought was his impressive financial planning? All mine. I'd been funding our entire lifestyle while he played big shot lawyer, and he'd never even noticed. And now he wanted to kick me out of my own house for his pregnant mistress? The irony was so thick I could taste it. I pulled out my phone and called my lawyer. Not the family lawyer Thomas knew about, the one we'd used to draft our will. No, I called Marcus Chen, Choi Holdings' head of legal, the man who'd helped my grandfather build his empire and who'd been waiting for this call for 12 years. Marcus, I said when he answered, it's time. He finally screwed up, Marcus said, and I could hear the satisfaction in his voice. Marcus had never liked Thomas, had warned me against marrying him actually, told me Thomas had the eyes of someone who valued money more than people. I should have listened. His mistress is pregnant. He wants me out by Friday. Marcus was silent for a long moment. Then he said, "Oh, Minso, he has no idea, does he?" "None whatsoever." "How do you want to play this?" I looked around the kitchen I'd designed, the home I'd built, the life I'd created. And then I thought about Halloween, 2 weeks away, my favorite holiday, the one day of the year when people could be whoever they wanted to be, when the world acknowledged that sometimes the scariest monsters looked exactly like normal people. "I want to haunt him," I said. "I want him to see exactly what he's losing, and I want him to watch it all slip away on Halloween night." Marcus laughed, that sharp lawyer laugh that meant someone was about to get destroyed in court. "I'll draft the papers, eviction notice for the house, since you're the actual owner, restraining order preventing him from liquidating or touching any assets, divorce papers citing adultery with a morals clause. By the time I'm done, Thomas Richardson won't have enough money to buy coffee, let alone support a pregnant mistress." "Good," I said. "But Marcus, don't file anything yet. I want him to think he's won. I want him to move her in. I want him comfortable. And then on Halloween, I want every ghost of his past decisions to come back and destroy him." "You're scary when you're angry," Marcus said, but he sounded proud. "I'm Korean. We invented revenge as an art form." That was Wednesday. I had 2 days until Thomas's Friday deadline. 2 days to pack up 12 years of my life. 2 days to plan my own resurrection. I started with the house. Every piece of furniture, every painting, every dish, I'd bought all of it. So I called a moving company and told them I needed everything removed by Thursday night. Everything except Thomas's clothes and his stupid golf clubs. He could keep those. Everything else, gone. Then I called my friend Yuna, who ran an interior design company. "I need you to stage a house. I need it to look exactly like it does now, but with rental furniture. Cheap stuff, the kind you get from IKEA. Can you do it by tomorrow night?" "How cheap are we talking?" Yuna said. "Like college student broke cheap. Like, is this particle board cheap?" Oh, somebody screwed up. "Yeah, I can do it. This is for Thomas, isn't it?" News travels fast in Vancouver's Korean community. "How'd you know?" "Saw him at Trader Joe's last week with some pregnant white girl. She was young, Minso, like barely old enough to drink young. I wanted to call you, but you didn't want to be the one to tell me. I get it, and I did. Nobody wants to be the bearer of that kind of news. Thanks for the heads up, though." "What are you going to do?" "I'm going to haunt him," I said, in the most literal way possible. By Thursday night, the house was transformed. Every expensive piece of furniture I'd bought was gone, replaced by IKEA's finest particle board. The Persian rugs? Gone. The designer dishes? Gone. The artwork I'd collected? Gone. The house looked like a sad rental, not a $3 million property. And the best part? Thomas had no idea. He'd been staying at some hotel, presumably with Madeline, preparing for his triumphant return with his new family. Friday morning, I left. But I didn't leave Vancouver. I checked into the Fairmont, the same hotel where Thomas had met Madeline, which felt appropriately symbolic. I got a suite with a view of the harbor and started phase 2 of my plan. I called my father in Seoul. It was Saturday morning there, and he answered on the second ring. "Appa," I said, using the Korean word for father. He did it. He actually kicked me out for another woman. My father was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, in Korean, "I knew this day would come. I prayed it wouldn't, but I knew. Are you all right, daughter?" "I'm better than all right," I said, also in Korean. "I'm free, and I'm angry, and I'm about to make him very, very sorry." My father laughed, that deep belly laugh he always had when he was proud. "Your grandmother would be so happy right now. She always said you had her fire. What do you need from me? Pull our investments from his firm. Every client Choi Holdings referred to Richardson and Associates, gone. Make it look coincidental. Make it look like market forces. But I want his firm to feel the pain by Halloween. Consider it done, my father said. Anything else? Send Aunt Min-ji to Vancouver. I need her here for Halloween. My father was silent again. Aunt Min-ji was my mother's older sister, and she was legendary in our family. She'd been a prosecutor in Seoul for 30 years before retiring, and she had a reputation for absolutely destroying people who crossed her family. You're bringing in Min-ji? Min-seo. That man has no idea what's about to hit him. That's the point, I said. I want him scared, Appa. I want him to understand that you don't throw away a Choi woman like garbage. Your mother would be proud, he said softly. My mother had passed away 5 years ago from cancer, and I knew she would have loved this moment. She'd always told me that the most powerful revenge was living well and making your enemies watch. I was about to do both. Over the next week, I watched from my Fairmont suite as Thomas's life started to quietly unravel. His firm lost 3 major clients, all Choi Holdings referrals, though he didn't know that. His partners started giving him strange looks at work. His secretary quit suddenly. Small things, irritating things, things that made him uncomfortable, but not enough to make him suspicious. And then, 10 days before Halloween, I started phase 3. I sent him a gift, a beautiful gift basket filled with Korean treats from H Mart, those little honey butter chips he used to love, some banana milk, those seaweed snacks he'd eat by the package. I included a note that said, "Congratulations on your new life. Wishing you all the happiness you deserve. Min-seo." He called me within an hour. "Min-seo? What the hell is this?" "It's a gift," I said sweetly. "For you and Madeline. I want you to be happy." "You're being weird. Why are you being weird?" "I'm not being weird. I'm being gracious. We were together for 12 years, Thomas. That meant something, even if it's over now." There was a long pause. "Where are you staying? Are you okay?" "I'm fine. I found a place. Don't worry about me." "Min-seo, look, I know this is hard." "It's not hard. It's actually kind of liberating. I hope you and Madeline are really happy together. I hope that baby is healthy. I mean that." I could hear the confusion in his voice. "Thank you, I guess?" "You're welcome." And I hung up. The thing about gaslighting is that it works both ways. Thomas had spent 8 months making me feel crazy, making me doubt myself, making me think I was imagining things. Now, it was his turn. That gift basket was just the beginning. Over the next week, I sent more gifts. Flowers to his office with a card that said, "I forgive you," a donation in his name to a children's charity with a note that said, "For the baby," a coffee delivery to his firm's morning meeting with a message that said, "Hope you're doing well." His partner started asking questions. His secretary's replacement mentioned it. Madeline, apparently, was getting jealous. But every time he called me, I was nothing but sweet, nothing but gracious, nothing but weirdly happy for him. "Min-seo, seriously, what's going on?" he asked after the 5th gift arrived. "Nothing's going on. I just want you to be happy. Stop sending me stuff." "Why? Don't you like the gifts?" "It's creepy." "Creepy?" I laughed. "Thomas, I'm just trying to be mature about this. You've moved on, I'm moving on. Can't we be adults?" "Then why do you keep sending me things?" "Because I'm a nice person," I said. "Look, if it bothers you, I'll stop. I just thought, after 12 years, we could at least be civil." "We can be civil without you sending me flowers every other day." "Okay, I'll stop. But Thomas, happy Halloween." "It's October 15th. "I know. I'm just saying it early. Happy Halloween." I hung up before he could respond. That night, I met Aunt Min-ji at the airport. She swept off the plane wearing a black Chanel suit and looking like death in designer heels. At 65, my aunt was still terrifying. She hugged me tight in the arrivals area and said in Korean, "Let's destroy this man." "I've set everything up," I told her as we drove back to the Fairmont.
Halloween party at his firm. Big clients, partners, everyone who matters. They're expecting him to bring Madeline and show off his new life. That's when we strike. What's the plan? Aunt Minji asked. Remember how you used to tell me that the best revenge is letting someone destroy themselves while you watch? She smiled. You have something planned. Oh, Aunt Minji, I said. I have everything planned.
The week before Halloween, I did something I'd never done before. I went back to our house, my house, technically, but I didn't go inside. I just stood across the street in the rain and watched through the windows. Thomas and Madeline were in there, living my life, sleeping in my bedroom, cooking in my kitchen. She was very pregnant now, moving around with that careful waddle that women get in their third trimester, and I felt nothing. No anger, no sadness, just this cold clarity that came from finally seeing things exactly as they were. Thomas hadn't loved me. Maybe he never had. He'd loved the idea of me, the successful, pretty, accommodating wife who made him look good. But the moment something shinier came along, something younger, something that made him feel more important, he discarded me like yesterday's newspaper. But what he didn't know, what he'd never bothered to find out, was that I was never the person he thought I was. I was so much more, and he was about to learn that the hard way. Halloween fell on a Friday that year. Perfect timing. Thomas's firm always did a big Halloween party. Costumes, open bar, the works. It was the one night a year when the uptight lawyers loosened up and pretended to be human. And this year, Thomas was planning to introduce Madeline to everyone. His partners knew about the affair, of course, but this would be the official debut of his new life. I spent Halloween Day preparing. Hair, makeup, the works. I wore a red dress, not just any red, but that red that's somewhere between blood and wine, the kind that makes people look twice. I wore heels that added 4 inches to my height. I wore makeup that made me look powerful, and I didn't wear a costume because I didn't need one. I was already playing the best role of my life. Aunt Minji wore black. She looked like a beautiful, expensive funeral, which was appropriate because we were about to bury Thomas's life as he knew it. We arrived at the party at 8 p.m. The firm's office building in downtown Vancouver was decorated with fake cobwebs and orange lights, and I could hear music and laughter from the street. We walked in like we owned the place. Thomas saw me immediately. I watched his face go from confused to shocked to something like fear. He was dressed as a zombie lawyer, which felt appropriate. Madeline was next to him, dressed as a pregnant princess, which felt like a joke, but probably wasn't meant to be one. I walked straight up to him. "Thomas," I said, smiling. "Happy Halloween." "Tino's?" Thomas said. "What are you doing here?" "I was invited," I said, which was true. His senior partner, David Chen, had sent me an invitation weeks ago. David was also one of Choi Holdings' biggest clients, though Thomas had never known that. "David and I are friends, didn't he tell you?" Thomas looked around frantically for David. "I don't understand. Oh, where are my manners?" I said, extending my hand to Madeline. "I'm Minji. You must be Madeline. Congratulations on the baby." Madeline looked terrified. She glanced at Thomas, then back at me. "Thank you? When are you due?" "January," she said quietly. "How exciting," I said. "You're first?" She nodded. "Being a mother changes everything," I said. "At least that's what I hear. I never had children. Thomas didn't want them." I looked at him. "Funny how that changed, isn't it?" Thomas's face went red. "Mincio, can we talk privately?" "Sure," I said. "But first, I want you to meet someone. This is my aunt, Minji Choi. She's visiting from Seoul." Aunt Minji stepped forward and gave Thomas a smile that would have made a shark uncomfortable. "Thomas Richardson, I've heard so much about you." "Nice to meet you," Thomas said automatically, shaking her hand. "Oh, we're going to get to know each other very well," Aunt Minji said. "I'm Mincio's attorney." Thomas's face went white. "Attorney?" "I've also been retained by the Choi family to handle some irregularities regarding property and assets in Vancouver. Which brings us to why we're here. Thomas Richardson, you've been served. She handed him the envelope. He stared at it like it was a snake. What is this? Divorce papers, with some additional documents. An eviction notice for the house, my house as it turns out, restraining orders preventing you from accessing or liquidating any assets, and my personal favorite, a detailed accounting of every penny I've spent on our marriage over the past 12 years, which you're now required to pay back. You can't. Oh, I can, I said. See, Thomas, here's the thing you never bothered to find out about me. That nonprofit I worked for, that's mine. That part-time job you thought was so cute and aimless, I've been managing my family's billion-dollar real estate empire. Every expensive thing in our life, I bought it. That house you're living in with your pregnant girlfriend, I own it. That car you drive, mine. Even that stupid golf membership you're so proud of, I paid for it. Thomas's mouth opened and closed like a fish. Around us, people were starting to notice the commotion. Partners were drifting closer. David Chen was watching with a small smile on his face. You're lying, Thomas finally managed. Am I? I turned to the crowd. David, you want to tell him? David Chen stepped forward, holding a glass of wine. Min Seo Choi is the sole heir to Choi Holdings, one of the largest private real estate development companies in Asia. Her family's company has been a client of mine for 8 years. We've done over $300 million in transactions together. She's also been the sole benefactor keeping your position at this firm viable for the past 3 years. The clients you thought you brought in, her referrals. The deals you thought you closed, her connections. Without her, Thomas, you're just another mediocre lawyer with good hair. The room was silent except for the Halloween music playing somewhere in the background. Some ridiculous Monster Mash song that felt surreal given what was happening. Thomas turned back to me, and I could see the moment when everything clicked into place. When he realized that for 12 years, he'd been married to someone he'd never actually known. When he understood that the quiet, accommodating wife he'd underestimated was actually the source of everything good in his life. When he finally grasped what he'd thrown away for a pretty young face and a baby on the way. Minso, he said, and his voice cracked. I didn't know. Of course you didn't know, I said. You never asked. In 12 years of marriage, you never once asked what I actually did with my time. You never cared. You just assumed I was content being Mrs. Thomas Richardson, living off your success, keeping your house clean and your life comfortable. It never occurred to you that I might be someone important, that I might be someone powerful, that I might be someone worth keeping. I made a mistake. You made a choice, I corrected. You chose her. You chose a younger woman, a pregnant woman, a woman who you thought would be easier to control than me. And now you have to live with that choice. But you're going to live with it in her apartment, not my house. You're going to live with it on her income, not my money. And you're going to live with it knowing that every single day for the rest of your life, you could have had everything, and you threw it all away. Please, he said. And God, he was crying. Actually crying. We can fix this. I'll end things with Madeline. I'll do whatever you want. No, I said simply. Because here's what you don't understand, Thomas. I don't want you anymore. I don't want to fix this. I don't want your apologies or your promises. I wanted you to see what you lost. I wanted you to understand that actions have consequences. And I wanted to watch your face when you realized that the biggest mistake of your life was underestimating me. Aunt Minji stepped forward again. You have until Monday to vacate the property. Any personal belongings you want to keep should be removed by then. Anything left behind will be disposed of. You're also being sued for reimbursement of marital expenses totaling $4.3 million. Your wages will be garnished. Your accounts have been frozen pending litigation. And just so we're clear, every piece of furniture in that house belongs to Minso. So you and your girlfriend should probably start shopping at IKEA. Thomas turned to Madeline, who'd been standing there in shock this whole time. "You didn't tell me your wife was rich," she said quietly. "I didn't know." "How do you not know your wife is a billionaire?" Madeline's voice was rising. People were definitely staring now. "How do you not know anything about your wife? What kind of relationship did you even have?" "Madeline, please." "No," she said, backing away from him. "No, this is insane. You told me you were leaving her because you didn't love her anymore. You told me she was clingy and desperate. You told me she needed you. But none of that was true, was it? She didn't need you at all. You needed her. And now what? We're being evicted from a house I thought you owned? You're broke. Your job is probably gone, and we have a baby coming in 2 months." She turned to me. "Did you plan this? The timing?" "Yes," I said honestly. "I wanted him comfortable. I wanted him to think he'd won. And then I wanted to take it all away on the one night of the year when people are supposed to be scared. Happy Halloween, Madeline." She looked at Thomas, at me, at the crowd of lawyers watching this play out like some terrible reality show. Then she took off her princess crown, threw it at Thomas's chest, and walked out. Thomas stood there, holding a plastic crown, wearing a zombie costume, surrounded by his colleagues, holding divorce papers, and finally understanding what he'd done. "I loved you," I said quietly, just loud enough for him to hear. "I actually, genuinely loved you. And if you'd ever bothered to really know me, you might have understood what that meant. But you didn't. So now you get to spend the rest of your life wondering what could have been if you'd just been a better person." I turned to leave, but he grabbed my arm. "Wait, Minso, please, don't do this." I looked at his hand on my arm, then up at his face. "Let me tell you something about ghosts, Thomas. You wanted me to quietly disappear. You wanted to erase me from your life like I never existed. But ghosts don't disappear. They haunt. And I'm going to haunt you for the rest of your life. Every time you see a Korean woman on the street, every time you hear someone speak Korean, every time you eat something from H Mart or see news about Vancouver real estate, you're going to think of me. You're going to remember what you had and what you threw away. And it's going to eat at you forever." "You're crazy," he said, but his voice shook. "No, I'm just finally done being nice to someone who never deserved it." I walked out of that party with Aunt Minji, and we didn't look back. Behind us, I could hear Thomas trying to explain to his partners what had just happened. I could hear people whispering. I could hear his career imploding in real time. We went back to the Fairmont and ordered room service and champagne. Aunt Minji raised her glass and said in Korean, "Your grandmother would have loved this." "I wish she could have been here," I said. "She was, in spirit. The Choi women, we don't forget, and we don't forgive, but we survive, and we thrive, and we make sure everyone who ever underestimated us lives to regret it." We clinked glasses, and I took a drink, and for the first time in months, I felt like I could breathe. The aftermath was, as they say, spectacular. Thomas's firm let him go the following week. Something about bringing personal drama into professional settings and losing major clients. Madeline's parents found out about the situation and convinced her to move back home to Calgary. She had the baby in January. A boy, I heard later. And Thomas had to pay child support on a paralegal salary, which is all he could get after being fired. But here's where the story gets interesting. About 3 months after the Halloween party, I got a call from someone unexpected. It was Madeline, my husband's pregnant girlfriend, the woman he'd chosen over me. And she was crying. "I need to talk to you," she said. "Please, it's important." I almost hung up, almost deleted her number and went back to my life of living well while my enemies suffered. But something in her voice, maybe desperation, maybe genuine remorse, made me agree to meet her at a coffee shop on Main Street. When she walked in, I barely recognized her. She looked exhausted, aged by months of single motherhood and regret. She was carrying a baby that looked remarkably like Thomas, which was its own special kind of tragedy. "Thank you for meeting me," she said, sitting across from me with trembling hands. "I didn't think you would." "Why are you here, Madeline?" "Because I need to tell you something. Something Thomas told me after you destroyed him. Something that changes everything." I felt my stomach tighten. In revenge stories, there's always a moment when you realize you might have missed something crucial. This was that moment. Thomas wasn't working late on Thursdays because of me. He wasn't having an affair because he'd stopped loving you. He was having an affair because someone was blackmailing him. Someone was forcing him to leave you. Someone who wanted your family's money. My blood went cold. "What are you talking about?" "Thomas met me at the Fairmont Money, but someone introduced us, set it up deliberately. They told Thomas that if he didn't create a public reason to separate from you, a reason big enough that you'd want a divorce, they would expose something about your family, about Choi Holdings, something that would destroy your business." "Who?" I whispered. "Who was blackmailing him?" "Your own brother, David Choi, your father's youngest son, the one nobody talks about." I felt the world tilt. My brother. I had a brother, David, who I'd only met twice in my entire life. He was a mistake, the product of my father's affair with his secretary before he married my mother. My father had paid for his entire life, but kept him separate, hidden away in Hong Kong. We'd been raised to pretend he didn't exist. Thomas was supposed to convince you that he was leaving you for me. He was supposed to make it messy and public, so you'd want out of the marriage quickly. And then, once the divorce was finalized, David was going to present evidence that Thomas had been coerced. He was going to make it look like you orchestrated the affair to hide money during the divorce proceedings. "That's insane," I said. "That makes no sense." "It does if you understand what David wanted," she said. "He wanted to prove that you weren't fit to run Choi Holdings. He wanted to show that you were willing to manipulate and destroy people for money. He wanted your father to remove you as heir and give the company to him instead." I sat there in that coffee shop, my vanilla latte growing cold in front of me, and realized that everything I'd thought was a victory might actually have been a setup. That my perfect revenge might have been exactly what someone else wanted me to do. "Why are you telling me this?" I asked Madeline. "Because Thomas is my son's father," she said, touching the baby's head gently. "And despite everything, despite the affair and the betrayal and all of it, he's a good man who was cornered into making terrible choices. He's been trying to find a way to protect our son, and he can't do it if he is paying $4 million to you. He thought you deserved to know the truth. He thought you deserved to understand that you weren't the architect of your own victory." I called Marcus immediately. "Pull everything," I told him. "I need to know everything about David Choi, where he's been, what he's been doing, who he's been in contact with, and I need to know if there's any truth to what I just heard." What Marcus found was worse than I could have imagined. David Choi had indeed been orchestrating my downfall, but it went deeper than just the Thomas situation. For the past 3 years, while I'd been running Choi Holdings' North American operations, David had been systematically poisoning my reputation within the family business. He'd been telling my father that I was making reckless decisions, that I was risking the company's legacy with my charity projects and social causes. More damaging, David had hired a private investigator to dig into my personal life. He had photos of me meeting with Marcus, recordings of me discussing Thomas's infidelity with close friends, documentation of every moment of pain and rage I'd experienced, and he'd been preparing to use all of it to prove that I was mentally unstable, emotionally compromised, and unfit to lead a global corporation. But here's where it gets really twisted. When David saw what I did on Halloween, when he watched me dismantle Thomas and my own marriage in that very public, very calculated way, something shifted. He realized that I was far more ruthless than he'd ever given me credit for. He realized that I was actually more dangerous than he was. So instead of attacking me directly, he pivoted. He reached out to me through intermediaries, and he made an offer. "Join me," the message said. Together, we could run Toy Holdings into something bigger than either of us could alone. We could expand into industries our father never dreamed of. We could build an empire. And we could do it without pretending to be the good guy. I didn't respond to the offer. Instead, I did something that shocked even myself. I called my father. "I need to tell you about your son," I said. "The one in Hong Kong. The one you've been pretending doesn't exist. Because he's been plotting to destroy me, and I need you to understand what he's capable of." My father was quiet for a long time. Then he said, "I know about David's plans. I've known for months." "What? Did you think I became a successful businessman by being naive?" he said. "I have my own people watching. I've known everything David has been doing. I've been waiting to see what you would do when you found out." "This was a test?" "Everything is a test, Minso," he said. "Life is one long examination, and you've passed. You've shown that you're willing to do what needs to be done. You've shown that you understand that sometimes mercy is cruelty and cruelty is mercy. You've shown that you can navigate the gray areas where real power operates." "I don't understand." "Your brother wants to run the company with you because he knows you're the only person in this family strong enough to do what needs to be done. He admires you. He's been testing you to see if you'd survive his schemes. And you did. Better than that, you thrived." "So what happens now?" I asked. "Now," my father said, "you decide whether you want a partner in this empire or whether you want to continue alone. Whether you want family, despite everything, or whether you want to prove that you're powerful enough to not need anyone." I hung up the phone and didn't call back for 3 days. During those 3 days, I thought about what revenge actually means. I thought about the cost of victory. I thought about the fact that in trying to destroy Thomas, I'd actually been participating in David's plan all along. I thought about the idea that maybe, just maybe, the person I'd been hunting was never really my enemy. On the 4th day, I reached out to David. I wrote, "Let's talk, but not about power, about why you felt like you had to scheme instead of just asking for what you wanted." His response came within minutes, "Because I wanted to know if you were strong enough to deserve it." I never wrote back. Some people don't deserve closure. As for me, I continued building. I continued living well. I continued haunting Thomas in the most elegant way possible by succeeding so thoroughly that he couldn't escape the reminder of what he'd thrown away. Every time Choi Holdings announced a new development, every time our company made the news, every time my face appeared in a magazine, he would see it and remember. That's the thing about ghosts. They don't need active confrontation to haunt someone. They just need to exist in the places where you can't escape them. David and I built an empire together, but we never became friends. We remained what we'd always been, partners bound by blood and ambition and a mutual understanding that sentiment is a luxury only the weak can afford. We had family dinners where we discussed market conditions and expansion strategies. We had board meetings where we ruthlessly cut underperforming divisions. We had a relationship based on respect and mutual recognition of our individual capabilities, not on love or loyalty or any of the things that bind normal families together. And that was enough. Years later, when people asked me about that Halloween night, about how I'd managed to completely dismantle my husband's life so perfectly, I always said the same thing. I didn't dismantle anything. I simply revealed what was already there. I showed him who he actually was, beneath all the pretense and the performance. And I didn't make any apologies for it. Because that's what I've learned in all of this, that revenge isn't about destruction. That the most devastating thing you can do to someone is show them the truth about themselves. That hauntings are only effective when the person being haunted can't escape the reminder of their own choices. Thomas sees me everywhere now. Not literally, he doesn't know where I am most of the time, but he sees me in every Korean woman who achieves something significant. He sees me in every business article about female CEO who's more powerful than her predecessors. He sees me in the mirror every morning when he remembers that he could have had everything, but instead chose chaos. And that, I think, is the perfect revenge. Not the destruction of a life, but the constant awareness of the life that could have been. Not the elimination of an enemy, but their perpetual reminder of their own inadequacy. I haunt him still. Will haunt him forever. Not through active malice, but through simple existence. Through success. Through thriving. Through living so completely and fully that my absence from his life becomes the most present thing in it. This is the story of how I became a ghost. Not through death, but through becoming so powerful that the person who tried to erase me could never escape the knowledge of what he'd discarded. This is the story of how I learned that sometimes the scariest person in the room isn't the one making threats. It's the one who's already won and is simply smiling about it. Halloween taught me that the monsters aren't always supernatural. Sometimes they're your husband. Sometimes they're your family in the mirror. Finally seeing clearly what you've always been capable of. So, if this story has any moral, any lesson beyond the satisfaction of vengeance served cold, it's this. Don't underestimate the quiet ones. Don't assume that because someone loves you, they need you. Don't mistake kindness for weakness or politeness for passivity. And most importantly, don't forget that the person you're destroying might have reserves of power you never even imagined. Because I was never just Min So Choi, the quiet wife keeping her husband's life comfortable. I was always the heir to billions. I was always the architect of my own destiny. I was always powerful enough to haunt someone for the rest of their natural life with nothing more than my own success. Thomas learned that, and now everywhere he looks, he sees proof of it. That's the perfect revenge. That's the ghost story that will follow him forever. And I am absolutely fine with that.